Go ahead and grab your hoop, your two pieces of fabric, the one with the pattern and the blank one, and some scissors. Take your inner hoop out, take both pieces of fabric, lay them on top of your hoop, centering the pattern. Take your outer hoop and place it over at the top, securing the fabric in. Go ahead and tighten your hoop and pull out any wrinkles. Make sure it's drum tight. And then go ahead and cut the excess. You probably want to leave about 1 inch. And then you'll be ready to stitch. To thread your needle, go ahead and pull out your floss according to the pattern. We're going to start with the branch. Go ahead and separate 3 strands out of the 6. To thread your needle, I like to squeeze the thread between my fingers with the eye of the needle up. I just slide that down while pinching that thread. It all catches and I pull a tail through. And then at the other end of your thread, you want to go ahead and tie, I just do an overhand knot. I do it twice, and that will secure the thread from coming up through your fabric when you start to stitch. We're going to start with the back stitch. Go ahead and come up at the bottom of the branch and go down a stitch length away. And then you're going to come up a stitch length away from where you went down. And then go back down into that second stitch. And you're going to repeat that pattern. Come up a stitch length away. And then go back down again. All the way till you get to the end of that branch. And then we'll start a new stitch. This is probably the easiest and most basic stitch you need to know for embroidery. Next is the lazy daisy stitch. Come up at the bottom of that pod. Go back down through that same hole or right next to it, either way. But do not pull your thread all the way down. Leave a loop at the top. You'll see that I leave some thread out, and then put your needle up through the top of that pattern. And now you can continue to pull the thread all the way through. And don't pull too tight, and then you do want to secure that loop down. So go ahead and go right above that thread and fasten that down. And then go ahead and come up through the next one on the branch, through the bottom, go back down through the same hole, but then come up at the top, leave a loop out. Do not pull the thread all the way through. Hook that loop and continue to pull your thread through, not too tight again, and then lock that stitch down so you don't lose that loop. And then just continue doing that with the rest of this part of the pattern. I'll go ahead and finish out this side and show you a couple more times just so you feel more confident with stitching the lazy daisy. At this point, you're going to want to tie off that thread because you're done on that side with this color. I flip my piece over, I find the closest stitch on the back that I was near, and I do an overhand knot through it, and then I double that up. I do one more overhand knot. There are lots of different ways to finish your threads on the back, so it's your preference. This is the way that I prefer. And then you snip that little tail. Now we're going to start the satin stitch on the daisy petals. Come up through the bottom of one of the petals, and I like to go right into the center just to keep my stitches straight and even. And then I'm going to come up on the sides. I'm going to do this two different ways. So this is the first way. So I'll do the outside border of that petal. I'm going to go over to the other side now. And then I'll continue to fill in the petal. Okay, and here's the other way. It's very similar. I still do the center stitch just to keep my stitches straight. And then I just focus on doing one side and I go directly in order. I don't outline it, so to speak. This is also your preference. This is my preferred way, but I notice a lot of embroiderists do it the first way that I showed you. So you can either outline your piece and fill it in, or you can fill it in as you go. Now that I'm done filling in those two petals, I'll go ahead and speed this up, but I'll keep showing you the process so you can kind of watch it happen and feel comfortable with the satin stitch. Okay, this is the French knot for the center of the daisies, and there's some French knot accents on this pattern as well. Go ahead and come up through your fabric. You're going to wrap your needle 2 times. And then you're going to go down next to that stitch, not in the same hole, because you'll just pull it back through the fabric. So a little bit away from it. You want to hold your one thread tight. And that's what gives you a nice clean French knot, as I'm holding tension, as you can see on that bottom thread. So I'll show you again. Come up through your pattern. Wrap your needle twice. Go down next to that hole that you came up, but not down the same hole. Hold that one thread tight and pull your thread through. I'll continue to show you these as well. And these do take a little practice. Okay, here's the woven wheel stitch. You'll always see an odd number of spokes for this pattern. We're using 6 strands here. Go ahead and come up through the outside of the wheel and then go down toward the center. You're not going to be able to fit your strands into the same center stitch because it's so thick, but go a little bit above that center spot. So you can see here I'm struggling just a little bit because there's so much thread. It's doable, you just have to be patient. And after you get all your spokes sewn on, go ahead and come up through one of the sections really close to the center, and this is where you begin to weave your thread. So I'm going to go under this spoke, and then I'll go over the next spoke. You'll see me pull that through. And then I can see where I'm at on my pattern, under, over. So now I'm going to go under the next spoke. It's a little tricky because it's tiny. and then over that spoke. I pull it tight, but not too tight. You'll see me kind of snug it up. But there we are, over and under again. Be careful not to snag your threads from the other part of your pattern. And I'm just going to keep following the over under. It's going to keep alternating. And I'll show you some more of that. I'll speed it up and then I'll show you what we do when we have to change thread. Okay, before changing thread, follow your pattern, and I would have gone under this spoke right here, so I'm going to go ahead and go all the way through. And I'm going to tie off the back and then start my new thread coming up like I'm coming under that spoke, because that would have been where I'm at on the under and over pattern. And then I just continue going. And I'll speed this up again. And then I'll slow it down when it's closer to the edges and show you what to do there with those stitches. So we're at the end. You can tell that we're close to the border of our pattern. I am just going to keep coming up and going back down and kind of framing this flower and covering up that outside pattern line. And I'm just going to do that until it's covered and looks framed in. The next stitch is the fishbone stitch. We'll come up through the top of this leaf. We'll go down a quarter of the way. And then we're going to come up on the right hand side and follow the pattern. And then we're going to go slightly below that center stitch. And then we're going to alternate sides. So now we're going to go to the left side, come up through the pattern, and then we're going to go below the last stitch we went down. And then we're going to go back to the right side following the pattern, come up through the top, and then keep going right below the stitch that you've gone down on. And we're just going to keep alternating that until we get to those daisy petals. Those daisy petals are going to interrupt this pattern that we've got going. So I will show you what to do. We're going to speed this up just a little bit. And then when we get to the petals, there we are. So I'm going to stop alternating sides now, and I'm just going to work on this left-hand side and fill it in like a coloring book. You always want to keep your stitch direction going the same way. We're going to come in through the top, go down through the bottom. And then you can see I filled in the top section. Now we're going to fill in the left bottom section of that leaf. And when I'm done there, I'll switch over to the right side, and then I'll work on that next leaf. I'll speed that up too. When your piece is complete, take your foam core that came in the kit or a piece of recycled cardboard, and then the cardstock also. Go ahead and cut the cardstock circle out. I use this to keep the fabric from looking rippled. This is the way I like to back my hoops. Flip it over, I put the cardstock in, and then I start to tuck the fabric down. And to hold that in place, I grab my foam core, and then I start to tuck it all down. I'm just holding that foam core really lightly. I'm not pressing down. I get everything where I want it, tucked in really clean and nice. And at that point, I can press down, and this will pop into place and be secure. And it gives you a nice clean back that you can write on. There you go.